I'm your co-host, Andy.
I'm Pat.
And I'm Eddie.
Join us as we go in search of the world's monsters, myths, and mysteries, right here on Paranormal Dads. But as always, we got a good show lined up for you guys. So settle down, turn off the lights, pull up your blanket, and get ready because recent sightings are up next.
So, got something a little different for recent sightings.
Ooh.
This is actually a recent article I read.
Okay.
About something that happened very long ago.
Oh.
However, it's making a comeback in the eastern United States.
Is it Kung Fu Elvis?
No.
Dang it.
Bell bottoms?
No.
Platform shoes with a goldfish swimming around in the heel.
No. Anybody ever hear of the Snallygaster?
God bless you.
What?
The what?
The Snallygaster.
I have never heard that word in my life.
Oh, no, I did hear that. That's like the B track to the Pink Floyd album, Light Side of the Moon. Song about suntan lotion.
So there's a woman in Maryland. I believe she's a nurse by trade. But she is currently working on putting together a museum for a cryptid known as the Snallygaster. It's a German folklore legend that came over to the States. And apparently there were reports of the Snallygaster in the U.S. back in 1909. So what is a Snallygaster, you may ask?
One may.
It sounds German.
Yeah.
So it's described as a dragon-like creature. It's half bird, half reptile. It was said to have large wings, a metallic beak, glowing red eyes, tentacle for arms, and sometimes tentacles coming out of its mouth.
Ooh!
Which is just kind of nasty.
Metal.
Razor-sharp metallic talons. And he was known to pick people up, suck blood from their necks, and fling their lifeless bodies aside after they were done with them.
He didn't even use all the parts?
Yeah, he's being pretty wasteful.
He's just being wasteful. Unlike the, you've got down in New Mexico, the
Chupacabra?
Chupacabra. At least they suck the blood out and they just leave it at that.
At least eat the body and use the fur.
This guy just abuses the body after he
just
like an Eddie skin cap.
So Sarah Cooper, this is a story from, actually, it's called thedailyyonder.com, an article written on the 19th of November by Liz Carey. But this person, Sarah Cooper, recently moved to the Maryland area, near Frederick, Maryland, and she's collecting all kinds of newspaper articles and other artifacts relating to this Snallygaster legend, and she's actually making a museum that's scheduled to open in 2022. And I guess her husband, she and her husband are building a barn, which is going to house the museum on their property, I guess. But the Snallygaster is kind of crazy. She couldn't believe, she's always Sarah has always been into, paranormal type stuff. So when she moved to Maryland, she started researching the folklore of the area, and she couldn't believe that she came across this cryptid and nobody around there knew about it. Nobody around there talked about it. So it's kind of her way of bringing awareness to the Snallygaster.
Huh.
She'll go to probably like Comic-Cons or different conventions and things, and bring some of the stuff she has amassed with her right now. So it's almost kind of a traveling museum right now, but she's working on putting it together, and it'll all be in one place, and you can actually go and visit the Snallygaster Museum.
Just when you think you know of all the cryptids,
You think, you haven't heard it all. You know,
I have a book on my shelf over here. It's a Cryptozoology Encyclopedia A to Z, and there's some weird stuff.
We'll have to
there.
dig into that and see if the Snallygaster is
I
in
bet
there.
you it is.
I don't know. I've just
a big
never
book.
heard of it, man. That's
It was new to me.
When was the last sighting of the Snallygaster? Does that get into that?
I think there was back in the 1940s. We'll get into that story in a little bit here, but back in 1909, the legend has it. Over the course of 2 months, several people reported seeing this creature and hearing fights between it and its supposed mortal enemy, the Dwayyo. You ever hear that one?
Here we go.
Dwayyo, Dwayyo, which is a wolf-like creature that walked on 2 feet.
Oh,
we have a paranormal grudge match here.
Sounds
Ding,
like
ding.
it sounds like a dog man or something. But people were hearing fights apparently between these two creatures.
is this something that's native to Maryland, or is it a carry? I mean, these sightings.
People believe it came over from Germany. So I don't know if they brought one over there or it was German immigrants that maybe witnessed one here in the States, and then they told the story about the creature, and that's how it kind of took off.
Okay.
But
Stow away on a boat, cross the Atlantic,
Maybe.
and then
It's like,
boom.
Oh no, we got Snallygasters in the galley. They're
but
shooting at him.
back in 1909, other sightings followed that first initial sighting, and it just took the country by storm. Apparently, the Smithsonian offered a reward for the hide of Snallygaster. Even President Teddy Roosevelt considered putting off a trip to Africa so he could stay and go on an expedition to find a Snallygaster and hunt him. He's got to be one of my favorite presidents, by the way.
I was gonna say.
some of the stuff he's been into.
He's done and said.
He's going to take his elephant gun and go capture a Snallygaster. And if anybody could have, it would have been him.
Didn't he have like wrestling tournaments in the White House? That's what I read about Teddy Roosevelt. He'd invite friends over and wrestle.
Let's wrestle.
He'd wrestle him.
We should
Wasn't
do-
Abraham Lincoln was an accomplished wrestler?
He's like a pugilist. Yeah, I think he was like
Or
a
was he a
bare knuckle
boxer?
boxer. Yeah, I think he was like a bare knuckle brawler.
And his record was like 100 wins and 1 loss or
Something like that. Yeah, you like roll him up and just fisticuffs right there in the right there. Man, I love it.
challenge you to a duel.
But you were asking if there were more recent sightings. Back in the 40s, one report declared the creature was dead, and this is a great story. Apparently, a moonshiner in Washington County, Maryland, claimed the Snallygaster had flown over his still and passed out because of the fumes from his still. The bird lizard fell into his 2,500-gallon vat and drowned, only to be destroyed later by revenue agents when they demolished the moonshine operation and its product.
Once upon a time in college.
So the government came in
Darn government boy
to get rid of the moonshine, and they found a cryptid, and they got rid of that too.
Snallygas skeleton.
Get rid of the
It
evidence.
flew into the distillery and drowned. It reminds me of a time in college. I was at a house party, and this guy had a bottle of, I think it was sake or
Rice wine.
rice. It was something
Sake.
imported from Japan.
Toilet wine.
Yeah.
But it was in a liquor bottle, and inside was a actual snake.
Yeah.
Like a dead
Oh.
snake. And then there was another one with a lizard in it.
Almost
Yeah.
like
And it-
formaldehyde or something.
Drink
Yeah,
that
and it
snake wine.
like ferments the animal or something in it.
Yeah, you
and
get like the snake vitamins.
sterilizes it. Yeah, so of course I had to be the tough guy and threw back a shot of that. Of course I had already had a few drinks in me by then. Otherwise I wouldn't have done it. But it could have been a Snallygaster for all I know.
Yeah.
We're missing an opportunity to do some branded alcohol and call it like Snallygaster Moonshine or something like that. There
know?
Brought to you by Paranormal
$1 million
Dads.
idea.
There you go. Trademark Paranormal Dads.
So anyway, that's the Snallygaster.
That's insane. So this museum is going up.
The museum's
fairly-
going up, and one of the other interesting things about it is, they saw him in 1909, and then again in the 40s. There's one kind of speculation that the Snallygaster is on like a 20-year hibernation kind of a thing, or it takes a 20-year incubation before another Snallygaster hatches, because apparently they come out of eggs. That's one of the things that people have found snallygaster eggs in their barns and things like that.
So is that kind
But
of
it's
like
thought-
cicadas? Is that what I'm
Cicadas
thinking?
have a
Right,
17-year.
7 or 17 year
17-year incubation for some reason.
But somehow this 20-year incubation period works out to his next visit will be in 2024.
Ooh.
So the museum will be open by then. We can go to the museum.
Paranormal Dad's
we
road
can
trip.
go out into the woods and look for the snallygaster.
Going to Maryland, and we're going to go snallygaster hunting in 2024.
Maryland 2024. I mean, but that's right in the wheelhouse of chupacabra. Not geographically, but in terms of the creature's description. I mean, you got wings, you got horns, you got scales, you got
Jersey Devilish in a way, too.
Like name a feature, the creature has it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's almost like the taxidermy, stitch it together, find every creepy
Right.
attribute and slap it together, and there you have a snallygaster. But I don't know, like the people who see this, like what could they be mistaking it for? Like with that many features,
Right.
If it has tentacles coming out of
its mouth,
what do you confuse it with?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I do wonder, too, about what if it is a cryptid, but it doesn't quite have all those features. And then, you get the telephone game. Or say it was like eating a snake or something, and they're like, it's got tentacles in its mouth when it's eating a snake or something.
Or maybe it was
know.
two different cryptids and they merged them together,
Maybe. I love the idea that like they have a rivalry, too. The Dwa.
Yeah, the Dwa or Dwayu.
Dwayu?
Dwayo.
Which is a dog.
Dwayo. Dwayyo.
Which is a dog man.
Yeah.
Again.
It's essentially a
coming
dog
back
man.
again.
I don't care what the snallygaster looks like. If it's going up against a dog man, I'm putting my money on the dog man.
Yeah.
Man. See, just when you think you've heard it all.
We're going to have to break out your book later, Andy.
Yeah, we will. Actually, during our intermission here, I'll see if I can find it and we could reference that.
Yeah.
The thing about the snallygaster idea, too, is it's kind of cool because like it does show us that we haven't heard everything yet.
No.
I mean, that kind of gets up there to me in like interdimensional creatures again. Like this is a 20-year thing. Like what if it's like a portal type thing where every 20 years
Every 20 years it sneaks through the portal. And
yeah. Or some of those things get through, a couple of them every so often. I don't know. It's just crazy.
But it's for cryptids like this is the reason why we will never run out of content, people.
It's time for pop, culture, and the paranormal.
All right, welcome to my segment of my turn at Behind the Wheel of the Pop Culture and the Paranormal. And this time around, it is not only a pop culture and paranormal, but it's also fairly recent as far as recent sightings go.
Yeah, twofer.
Yeah, it's I recently saw the film Ghostbusters Afterlife, and it is something else. It's very exciting. So for our listeners, I mean, I think most of our listeners are familiar with Ghostbusters, like the idea. The original Ghostbusters film in 1984 featured the cast of Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, and Ernie Hudson. And I don't want to give away too much about this, but they set this as a direct sequel. So if you're following Ghostbusters, the actual like movie franchise, there was Ghostbusters 1, which came out in 1984. Ghostbusters 2, which I think was like 86 or 87.
Yeah, a couple years later.
Something like that. And then, which was less well received, but still pretty fun.
Yeah, it was still a decent one.
Yeah. And then that was it. That was it. There was people who wanted to see more Ghostbusters, and I was certainly one of them. It was a fun movie franchise. Ghostbusters 2, fun fact for Eddie fans out there or whatever, I read the novelization of the movie before the movie came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so a lot of, and maybe they still do it now, I don't know, but especially in the 80s and 90s, before a movie would come out, they would release a paperback version of the movie as a book. Yeah. And you could buy the book and read it and kind of know what the movie was about.
They actually did that for Star Wars.
They did not.
I believe, yeah.
But the book was true to the movie, which sometimes isn't the case.
Yes, because sometimes the people who are doing the book get a copy of the script and they have to turn it into a novel. And sometimes they make script changes at the last minute that the book doesn't show. And so sometimes the book will vary a little bit. And I did notice that with the Ghostbusters book. There were some parts that were a little bit different. I didn't know they did it with Star Wars.
Yeah. And then another one I can just think of off the top of my head, Rocky 3.
No way.
I actually read the book before I saw the movie.
Look at that.
Yeah.
think we're nerdy. No, we're nerdy.
I remember Ghostbusters 2 had the painting, like the
Yeah,
ghost comes
Vigo
out
the
of
Carpathian.
painting.
That's the name of the guy in the yeah. And it was a fun movie, you know. But after that one, they just did not come out with another film. They had the cartoon, they had a bunch of other things, but nothing as a full feature motion picture. Well, about 3 years ago now, they came out with another. They called it Ghostbusters, and it was like set in the universe of Ghostbusters, but it wasn't looked at as a direct sequel. It kind of nodded to the fact that the first Ghostbusters film existed, but it was almost a reboot. There was kind of the film, and I enjoyed it. I did personally, but I think a lot of people didn't necessarily dig it because it felt like if you're going to make a Ghostbusters movie, why do it this way? Can't you do it a different way?
Are you referencing the one with the girls, with the ladies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had Melissa McCarthy, and
there were a few cameos and things like that in there. For it, but
there were cameos. Bill Murray had a cameo.
He did.
Yeah, but they weren't playing their characters from Ghostbusters. Right. There was a marble bust of Harold Ramis in the college that this one lady was like teaching out of. So they snuck little Easter eggs in for people, but not a thing of like, this is Ray Stantz, this is Peter Venkman. They didn't do any of that for this movie. So a lot of Ghostbusters fans were kind of like, well, I mean, sure, but not a real Ghostbusters sequel. So kind of like a story set sideways to the other one. So this one comes out this year. It was supposed to come out last year. COVID really kind of put a number on that movie. And Sony / Columbia was not about to release this digitally. They were like, nope, this is coming into theaters. We're not playing around here. It's just theaters only. So because of that, it kept getting punted until finally, and I think it was I don't know why it didn't come out at Halloween, but it comes out 2 weeks after Halloween.
Yeah. I thought that was very odd.
Very weird.
Yeah.
It's a perfect Halloween movie.
Yeah.
So, not wanting to give away too much on the plot, but I will say this much about it. So it's set several years, essentially it's set real time, 30 years after the events of the Ghostbusters films. And it basically picks up with Egon's grandchildren and what they're doing. And essentially it's set in a small town in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. It's not set in New York City.
Okay.
And there's a very big reason for that in the movie, and it kind of plays itself out over time. You know, the thing about Ghostbusters, which was so great about it in the early 80s, was that New York, especially in the early 80s, was still kind of a rough place. You know, it was still kind of remnant of the gang stuff, the horrible. New York was a dangerous place in the 70s. Like, that was a big deal about it. And heck, that movie Warriors was kind of a tip of the hat.
I actually watched that this weekend. It was on Prime for just a short time. My brother happened to spot that it was on there, and he let me know. And so I saw that it was like going to leave Prime in like 8 days. So I got busy and watched it this weekend.
Yeah, and it's a over-the-top gang movie, basically, about gang violence in the 70s, but in New York. And that was kind of the idea, was that New York, even in the early 80s, was still kind of a rough spot. So New York, in the story of Ghostbusters, it's almost its own character. And so having like hauntings and all these, having ghosts wander the streets of New York was kind of a scary, kind of a creepy prospect. And so setting it in Oklahoma is kind of an interesting idea, but when you see it play out, you're like, oh, okay, I see why they did this. But it involves his grandchildren. It involves kind of this legacy of the Ghostbusters kind of fading away into silence. People were like, yeah, it was crazy. New York was crazy in the 80s with ghosts, and now it's all calmed down. And Paul Rudd is in it, who's hilarious.
You can't go wrong if Paul Rudd's in it.
Yeah.
But I was asking you before we started recording because, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I almost wonder if it's like when Jurassic World came out and I saw Jurassic World in theaters, it was so nostalgic because there were so many little, not even Easter eggs, not even hidden things, but they were just like an obvious nod, an obvious, homage to the original Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And so is it kind of like that where there's a lot of, they pay tribute to some of the original?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they did their darndest. I mean, not even that. It's definitely tied to the other movies. I mean, so the original cast is in this movie. So it's almost like with Jurassic World. I mean, if I remember right, they didn't have original cast members in that movie. They didn't have
a couple of them. The Hammond the rich guy. He was in Jurassic World.
Okay.
Okay, but they didn't have like
But yeah, the main characters.
Jeff Goldblum wasn't in there.
Yeah, although I think Goldblum was in one of the later Jurassic World.
He was
ones.
in 2 or 3. Or
I think they
maybe
brought
even
him back.
both.
Okay,
Yeah.
But for example, in Jurassic World, they find the old the old vehicles, from the original episode.
Right.
And this isn't even a spoiler because this is in one of the trailers. But don't they find the old Ghostbusters vehicle?
They do.
in
They
the
find
new
Ecto
one.
One.
Yeah.
And the first thing one of the kids says is like, "What an old piece of crap this is!" Like that, And even in the '80s movie,
Yeah, back in the day, it was a piece of.
it was an old ambulance. When he pulled it up, actually, wasn't it an old hearse?
I think it was Old Hearst.
Was it a hearse?
Yeah,
Okay.
and they turned it into like an ambulance,
like an
looking-
ambulance kind of thing. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that too, where it's like, Ghostbusters was 30 years ago. Just file that away. But it has a ton of heart. It's very fun. And anybody who's a fan of the Ghostbusters, let alone paranormal movies, and this is where the fun part, because I feel like you ride this line between being like charming, nostalgia, but also kind of still scary. And I feel like Stranger Things, if you guys are familiar with that one on Netflix, was very good at that. A little bit less comedy, had funny parts, but Ghostbusters, they've always rode that line, I think, really well between you're laughing 1 second and the next you're actually kind of creeped out. You're like, oh man, what's going to happen here? And so one of my favorite scenes in the first Ghostbusters was when Ray and Peter are in the New York Public Library and they turn the corner and there's a librarian, just turns and looks at them. Shh. And it's
And they kind of respond with humor.
Well, their initial reaction is terror because they just look at each other and the look on their faces. And then Bill Murray's character starts coming back with quippy humor, and that's what kind of makes it kind of this almost this like infectious mixture of like they take. They take some of the fear out by making fun of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's very similar in this movie too, where there are some legitimately creepy parts, but they kind of interfuse it with some humor as well. But not to want to give too much away, but the film is called Ghostbusters Afterlife, and the original cast does show up. And for people who are following along, Harold Ramis did pass away, I think, 4 years ago. And so they did find a way to get him in the movie. And so all I'll say is just, between the title of the movie and the fact that he's in the movie, keep your eyes peeled for what happens. It's a very fun, sweet part.
Now, is he Egon?
He's Egon.
Egon. Okay.
Yeah, he's the brainy one with the glasses.
Okay.
Yeah, and the crazy hair.
So in the world of paranormal movie critic Eddie, would you rank this solid 8 or 9 stars out of 10? Where's this one coming in on the paranormal scale?
Oh, I easily give it a 9.
Yeah.
It's just really fun. We walked out. I'm very emotional when it comes to storytelling. I'm kind of an emotional guy, period. And so it's like I had tears in my eyes a little bit. I was laughing. I was clapping. It was a fun movie, and it does, especially as we all talk about being paranormal dads. These guys in this movie are very much paranormal dads in some cases, and so it's like seeing this notion of acknowledging the spirit world and then carrying that legacy on with younger kids. There's a great scene in it where one kid's like, I don't believe in ghosts. And right as soon as he said that, a ghost flies by and slimes the entire place. And he's just sitting there standing in slime, dripping in it. And so it's just a fun take. So like I said, it's a great film and perfect, frankly, for the holiday season. If you like a little bit of spooky with your holiday plans, guaranteed you'll have a good time with this one. But yeah, can't get enough of the Ghostbusters. It was a fun one for sure.
Yeah, Christmas is such a ghosty holiday anyway. It really is.
I said that to someone.
The more
and they
you
were
think
like, "No,
about
it's
it, there's so many ghost stories associated with Christmas. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be a good one. I haven't been to a theater in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to maybe 2 or 3 movies since COVID started. So
Sure.
Yeah, that's one I'll probably have to go see in the theater.
I think you should. I've been kind of feel like I've been making up for lost time, where I've gone to the theater probably 4 times in the past couple of months. But it's kind of nice to kind of get back in the
Get out of the house.
Get out of the house, get into a film theater, and clap along with people who are excited to see the same stories you are. But yeah, Ghostbusters Afterlife by far is super fun and a paranormally little treat.
Who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters!
And now it's time for the main mystery.
All right, everybody, welcome to the main mystery. And today we have a main mystery that is more near and dear to my heart than any topic we've ever talked about thus far.
This is one of those things that, especially like we talked about this before the mics went on, about the notion of soul contracts and the people that you meet, the people in your life that you just feel connected to. You just have a connection. You're just like, wow, I think we're going to be friends. I mean, I remember meeting this guy. I remember meeting Pat, 18 years ago now, 17 years ago?
Yeah, it's got to be about that.
And being like, I think we're going to be friends, you know? Yeah. Same with you and me. I mean, it was one of those things. Like, I met you, and I'm like, I can't pretend to know when this is going to happen, but I feel like we're going to be friends, you know? And then, 2 years? Not quite 2 years. Like a year and some change later.
Well, and see, and again, it's kind of synchronicity. It's kind of fate and destiny. Because my session with Eddie was a unique one, talking about past lives here.
So,
still to this date, out of all the readings I've done over the years, out of all the psychic sessions, Eddie is the oldest soul that I've come across, which means Eddie is a glutton for punishment, apparently, because he's had more past lifetimes than any other individual that I've ever met. And
I can't keep this right.
But, you know, we hit it off big time, but like most of my clients, I lost touch with him for like 2 years or a period. I don't know.
A year plus.
Yeah, period of time. And turns out one of his family members bumped into me in public, and they say, "Oh yeah, you gave Eddie a reading, you know, and said he was an old soul." And
you can just say you met my ex-wife,
ex-wife Shireen, and you know, then we all had dinner together, and it was like,
and
then we were brought back together, and here we are.
Picked up like no time had gone by at all. It was just fun, and that's the thing. It's like I think with the notion of soul contracts and these connections that we have, it's like there's people that you meet every day. You know, you say you go to work and you see them all the time, but you don't feel connected. You don't feel moved. You don't feel like your life is taking a different path because of these people. And then there's people that you do meet, and either you maybe fall in love with them, or you become really close friends with them, or they affect your life in some way, whether positive or negative. And this is where we get into that notion of a soul contract. Because sometimes those things can be negative, negative under the human definition of negative. And so it's like, when you look at it in the mindset of an eternal being that's going to reincarnate, it's like when we go back to our light bodies, or whatever it is you want to call our permanent existence, and the notion is, man, that was great. We three were good buddies, and we were best friends, and we made a podcast in this next life. Hey, next time around, I'm going to be a bully to you. You know, it's like like the notion is like we take. Am I wrong? Is that kind of how that goes?
It's spot on, Eddie. I mean, and if anybody, and along those lines, if anybody wants to see a Disney Pixar representation of this, watch the movie called Soul.
Oh, Soul, so good.
You talk about a soul that's getting ready to come down to Earth and live a life, and the roles that they're choosing, and the you know, the encounters that they're promising that they're going to have with one another. It's so moving, and it's so spot on in terms of what I found to be true about reincarnation, and you know, how we come into this life knowing we're going to live with certain people, knowing we're going to have an impact on certain people, knowing that we each have a destiny of sorts to fulfill, whether that's one of teacher or student or doctor or patient or troublemaker, so that another person can experience what it's like to be a forgiver of a troublemaker. But in past lives, I know I get carried away and get a little hyper, but it's quite literally my absolute favorite topic of the spiritual realms. And we were talking about this before we started because, you know, in conversations with people, my mind always goes to past lives first, because they really do shape a large part of who we are today. And Pat was talking about he knows a little bit how to play guitar, but he's not an expert by any means. But no. He recently bought a second guitar.
Not even proficient, really. Yet I own 3 of them now.
You own 3 of them?
I just bought a new one.
And so I was kind of joking, okay, Pat has a thing for guitars. He can't play very well yet, but he has a thing for it. Is it so, you know, insane to say that maybe in a past life Pat was good at guitar, and maybe that, you know, that draw or fascination with them has led him to purchase a trifecta of them nowadays.
I used to sit around the campfire at the stagecoach and
that's just it.
Play.
Yep. Play us a song, Cookie.
He was Paranormal Pete back then.
Eddie was the old prospector,
always
eating his beans off to the side.
In every
not
life.
Participating.
Yeah. We let Stinky Eddie sit off to the side because he stinks. It's in his nickname. It's not a clever one. It's a factual one.
You know, but the thing is, all of us, you listener, and us three and everybody, we are drawn as humans to certain time periods, to certain locations, and to certain historical events.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's Prohibition era USA and speakeasies. You know, maybe that's the sinking of the Titanic. Maybe it's Renaissance England and jousting. You know, could be medieval France. It could be, you know, the Great Wall of China. Like, what are you drawn to? What places have you always wanted to visit and can't quite explain why? A lot of these things are rooted in past life memories. It's like right below the surface. It's like our soul remembers, but our brain doesn't quite connect the dots.
Yeah, and it's like you have almost a strange longing for some of these things, places that you maybe have never even actually been to, but this notion of like a feeling of being connected or wanting to be connected, in fact, reconnected to these places. I know past life stuff, especially as you and I kind of embarked on this, because I mean, up until my psychic reading with you, I was always a fan or a passive, I think, person when it came to the paranormal. And I think literally the reading with you and then going on my own personal journey, which, you know, has led me where I'm at to this very day, up into to create this podcast. But it's been like a very active part of the spiritual and the paranormal, like kind of taking a deep dive into what those things mean to me. And one of those things that kind of got activated, kind of synonymously with the reading that you gave me, was I was having reoccurring dreams of this time and place that I was dressed in what you can only really describe as like ancient, like Bronze Age, like clothing, a lot of robes and like flowing loose garment, almost a Middle East style garb, and a lot of sandal wearing. and it was a reoccurring dream that I was having over and over and over again, and I couldn't quite shake that feeling that I had. I lived in a part of, and I'll get to the point here, but I lived in a part of a world that was very kind of desertish and had trees and stuff, but wasn't nearly foresty. And I remember one of the dreams, not one of them, several of them reoccurring, but one of the themes in it was that we had looked up into the sky and pointed, and there was basically like a planet we were looking at, and it was essentially Earth. That in this dream, I wasn't even on Earth. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, I think this is a Mars thing. And I was wondering about that. And then later on, coming up, and this was before I knew this, where it was like there's these active beliefs that maybe a civilization of humans lived on Mars way back a long time ago, when we were the notion of civilization kind of having these peaks and valleys of our development, and that we did have moon bases, we did have Mars bases, and these are things that were very real and functional, and we were a space-going species, and then, you know, things got reset, and we forgot, and we don't know how anything got built because we forgot these things, and so that notion, that tie of another time, another place, but you feel pulled to it, you feel connected to it, and you can't really explain why. Whether it's guitars, or it's Mars, or it's things that rhyme with ours. Bars. Oh, man, I love me some drinks.
You know, but speaking of drinks, I mean, there's so many things that can tie us to past lifetimes. Speaking of drinks, and this is one of 100 examples in my book, but I had a client years ago who I told her about her past lifetime, and images, like they always do, they come to me in my mind's eye, and it looks like I'm watching a trailer for an upcoming movie on YouTube. I see it as if I'm there. And I saw this lady in 1800s Old West or Wild West. She was married to a guy who loved his whiskey and he loved his poker. And he didn't treat her very good. And he was often losing large quantities of money and drinking whiskey late into the night.
So he wasn't good at poker.
He wasn't good.
He just liked it.
He liked his whiskey. He was bad at poker.
Yeah.
But her feedback, as always, what was most astonishing. And she said she hates the smell of whiskey, can't stand it, major aversion to it nowadays. Her current husband, or at the time, they might not be together anymore, but she said her husband was not very good to her. He was an active poker player, also not very good because he lost a lot of their money and went into debt. And to boot, on top of that, she hates the Old West. Her father apparently was a big John Wayne fan. And every time she's hanging around at family, holidays and stuff, and he turns on a Western, she just leaves the room. She can't stand the Old West. So poker, whiskey, the Old West. Of course, of course she doesn't like those things because it stirs up some deja vu, some memories of a past lifetime where those things weren't very pleasant for her. So again, our brain can't recall, but our soul never forgets. Mm-hmm. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have good examples and analogies of that, of people who are born with a particular talent or a special interest or a particular ability that is just above and beyond what the average 5 or 6 year old kid should be able to do. These kids who are playing piano in professional concerts by the time they're 8 years old.
Right.
It's not a stretch to assume they might have played piano in a past life and they were just born knowing how to tickle the ivories.
All the wiring was already there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's so many stories of people who just know how to do things,
And
as children.
It's always children. Kids, particularly kids between the ages of 3 and 4, that's a magical little window of time because that's when children are most likely to sense and feel and relay information that could be related to their past lifetimes, information that could be related to memories they have of what they did in between lifetimes, which is a place we all know as heaven.
Yeah.
And I've found it to be true that most people spend anywhere between 10, 20, 50 years. It varies, but we spend quite a chunk of time in the afterlife before coming back for another adventure. But it's these 3 and 4 year old kids who, they're still incredibly psychic and intuitive, but they're finally at 3 and 4, they're articulate enough to explain what they're feeling and what they're seeing, which they couldn't do when they were 1 or 2 years old.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I rounded up on Ranker.com a couple stories of well-known cases of kids who claim that they do remember who they were. One,
and that's Ranker, like Ranker, like ranking versus Rancor. Like I hate this so much.
This is like a ranking system.
Oh, good. Just making sure.
But the first one
Things
here,
I hate. Starting with number 1. You.
It says a Midwestern toddler recalls writing "Gone with the Wind."
Oh.
A little story might sound vaguely
bold
familiar.
claim.
Yeah. And it says, from the time he was 2 years old, a Midwestern child named Lee insisted he had another house and another mommy. By the age of 3, he began saying that he was born on June 26 rather than his actual birthday of June 21st. Lee claimed his middle name was Coe, which is spelled C-O-E. And he wrote movies for a living and that he had a daughter named Jennifer. Lee's sister asked him how old he was when he died, and he promptly replied that he was 48. So Lee's curious parents relayed the titles of several movies to Lee, asking him if he had written them. When they mentioned Gone with the Wind, Lee became enthusiastic. He eagerly claimed that he wrote the film. So after a quick Google search, Lee's parents learned that the writer of Gone with the Wind was named Sidney Coe Howard. So there's the Coe. Mm-hmm. And Howard was born on June 26, and wouldn't you know it, had a daughter named Jennifer, and passed away at, guess what age?
48.
Age 48. Yeah.
And that's a weird number to just pull out of the air.
And how old was this kid?
He was 3.
3?
Of course.
This kid's not pulling this up on the internet. No. I'm going to lie to my parents about writing Gone with the Wind? Yeah. That's crazy.
It's crazy. And there's only, 100 other of these cases. I mean, it's like... That's, and I've lectured on a lot of topics over the years, ghost stories, talks about angels, talks about intuition. My lecture on past lives is my favorite because it comes with so much factual evidence. Yeah. Like, there's no way a 3-year-old kid could hit the nail on the head with that many specifics. Like, there's no way. He was the writer of Gone with the Wind.
I think there was a story, and I'm going to butcher this, but there was a story of a child who had came back and said he had just helped design the Titanic.
Mm. Yeah, sounds familiar. Also,
yeah. He was going into like specific design schematic criteria that and he was a young kid. I mean, he was like 5 or 4, and he was going into like beam tolerances and twist ratios of steel, and they're like, how does he know any of this? And they were like, did he watch this on the History Channel? I was like, no, they don't go into that. How many rivets, how many you could fit into a square inch of a... Yeah.
So was he responsible for the Titanic?
I know,
That's
right?
I want to know. Maybe
so
wasn't that good of an engineer?
We can sue him. I want all your Elmos. Give me all your Sesame Street books.
So, anyway, there's so much. I mean, we could...
Do you have one more to throw out at us?
Well, I have another story, but I did want to read to you a couple couple comments that popped up on my Facebook page the other day. Just to illustrate how common this actually is. So, was it last week? The week before last, I was in Kansas City and made an appearance on Mix 93 Radio in Kansas City to promote my book and talk past lifetimes. It was a blast. But the night before, I kind of wanted to fan the flames a little bit, so I posted on my psychic medium Andy Myers Facebook page. I just said, "Hey, what's the weirdest thing you've ever heard a kid say?"
Yeah,
because it's just opening up Pandora's past life box there.
Yeah,
and slew of comments came in. I screenshotted a couple of them, but somebody named Jenny Ellis said her daughter once said, "I miss Grandpa B," and the funny thing is, Jenny's daughter never met Jenny's dad. He passed away in 2012. The child wasn't born until 2015, but they have some sort of a connection. I mean, how can and this pops up in my book, in my upcoming book as well. How can you miss somebody that you never met?
Right.
Unless it's somebody that you crossed paths with in heaven before you came into this lifetime.
Yep.
And it doesn't take a rocket scientist.
And I would only put you saw them when you were like little here. Like they showed up to you as a 1 or 2 year old and talked to you and then stopped showing up.
Kind of appear in your bedroom and wave hello kind of deal.
My youngest daughter, when she was barely two, she was like 2 years and 1 month old, barely into her second year of life, and her great grandfather had passed away. My ex-wife's granddad, and so we hadn't gone to the funeral. I stayed back with her because she was so small. The drive alone would have eaten this kid up. She would have been a mess. And she didn't travel well anyway, so we're like, I'll just stay here and you go to the funeral. And so when they got back from the funeral, and it was maybe a day or two, Gwen starts pointing at this long hallway in our old house and just says the word man. She's like, man. And she had never done that before. And she would like point and talk about this man. And then after a while, about a week or two of this, and she would, with regularity, about every other day, a couple times a week, she would say, man, and just point down the hallway. Same hallway, And then after a few weeks of her not saying it, she looked at us and she's like, man, go. And she, like a question, and like put her hands out like where
What's
did
the deal?
Where did he go? He didn't, he stopped showing up. And I think about that with deceased relatives who like, don't quite want to transition yet, so they hang out for a little bit until they're ready to go. I do think about that. So when you have small kids who say they miss somebody, I wonder about that. Yeah, it's touching. It really is.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Another response on my page from a lady named Chelsea. She said that my middle child is now 7 years old. And he said he remembers his journey from heaven because he used to watch me play with his oldest brother. And he remembers being placed in his mom's tummy. And I love this part. He also states that God is a woman and is very kind.
Oh, there you go.
I can get on board. I can absolutely get on board with a higher power that's a woman. It kind of makes sense.
I mean, you get into that and once again, you get into the notion of a higher power that just manifests itself in a way that you would find most.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. Like, us guys, what are we doing?
Yeah.
The world's a hot mess right now. We need it. We need a God that's a woman to fix this.
Yeah. Calm things down. Let's settle down a little bit. Simmer down.
Anyway, I love that, and that's what I wrote back to her as I love the thought of God being a woman. But there's something to what you said, though. I feel like a higher power or a divine being usually manifests as whatever you would be most comfortable seeing it as,
So you're going to see God as a Bigfoot.
My God might be a Sasquatch. Yeah. Not scary, just, kind of a gentle giant, friendly, one that you might want to snuggle and hug and
totally,
make you a warm cup of soup, make
Harry and the Hendersons Bigfoot.
Yes.
That's the one,
Yes.
The Andre the Giant, $6 Million man.
That's Pat's. I thought Pat was going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's how God's going to appear to Pat.
What would yours be, like Baby Yoda?
Oh man, for me,
what makes you feel most cozy?
A bear hug from Leonard Nimoy. That's who God's going to show up as.
All right. Well, last one I'll read from Krista. My son, between the ages of 3 and 4. You see a trend here, of course. He's
about that. That's that window, man.
That window. So her son, between the ages of 3 and 4, would tell me every morning when he got up about going to his black house. He said that his mom was Sarah and that he can only call her mother, not mommy. He described rocking his baby brother, Alex. Fun fact, he doesn't have a baby brother in this lifetime anyways. But he remembers rocking his baby brother, Alex, who was wrapped in a brown blanket. Super vivid descriptions, always kind of creeped out Krista. But she believes that he was seeing or experiencing something else, something from a different time or place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You don't
crazy.
see a lot of brown children's blankets around these days.
Not really. Bright colors. It's
Bright
like brown
colors.
kids blanket.
Right?
You don't see many houses that are painted black.
Black.
either.
Yeah.
No.
That's definitely an older throwback. Did you guys have any, Pat, did you have any experience with your children at all? Like when they were super young, having any sort of weird?
I can't think of any
Experiences?
off the top of my head. I don't. I got nothing.
Okay, that's fine.
But
His kids are geniuses, though. By the way, both of them. So
Yes.
and I've thought that about both Kaya and Colton. It's like, you take a kid who's really mature, really bright, really intelligent, and that's some of the telltale smoking gun signals of an old soul. It's somebody who's lived so many times that when they come back into this world with a new body as a youngster, they really don't seem like a youngster for very long because they're wise beyond their years. They pick things up pretty quickly, whether that's nursing school or a knack for solving Rubik's Cubes,
Yeah.
and I'm just, or a talent, an interest, a hobby, kids pick up really quickly. It just makes you wonder, but they're children by appearance only, but their souls are as ancient as any other adult.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Souls are all kind of on equal playing fields, really. There at that point, it's crazy.
Yeah. So again, January 11th is the date to buy the Sky Diaries book. That'll be on Amazon. In the show notes, we'll post a link to my email, because when you buy the book on January 11th, email my office proof of your purchase. We'll tell you how to attend one of the free events and help spread the word. I know it's after Christmas that's coming out, but I figured it would give people something to read, something to inspire you and get you through all the dark, boring winter months of January and February into springtime. And the book is a memoir of sorts. It's my life story. It's how my family and I pieced together clues and evidence that we had shared past lifetimes together in various capacities and in various roles. The book has been about 5 years in the making, but technically speaking, it's been more like 200 years in the making, because it dives into a past life that some of my family members and I shared together. And it's, a lot of my heart and soul is in this book. And it was kind of surreal as it all came together, to realize that things I had been experiencing in my youth, as young as 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, all of those events led me to do what I do nowadays, not only as a psychic medium, but as a father to my daughter Sky, who's 7 years old, and she's on the cover of the book. She's pretty thrilled about that.
going on 16, I should mention. By the way.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of her the other day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so old.
So, again, the book comes out January 11th on Amazon. We're trying to make this a bestseller. We're trying to make this a #1 bestseller. I have a friend who has some ties to some connections in Hollywood, and I was chatting with her about the book and, just how much of my heart and soul is wrapped up in the story, and what a long process it's been to finally see this through to fruition. And I was telling her, I said, I've always imagined that this story would be a movie, like it would be a Hollywood movie. We'd be eating popcorn, watching it in a theater someday. And she said, oh, it will. And she's a very spiritual person, very wise. And she said, it will. You put in the effort, when effort, comes together with manifestation, and, when you combine your hopes and dreams with a lot of effort, good things tend to happen. She said, this will be made into a movie. And she said, when the time's right, she said she'll introduce me to the right actors and directors and people to make that happen. But then you get to wondering who would play you in a movie, like Eddie. If there was a story about Eddie's life, who would play Eddie?
I don't know. I feel weird, like picking my own. Yeah, let's let the other guy pick the other guy.
Who would play
Somebody
Eddie?
once told you, Eddie, you kind of look like a young Matt LeBlanc from Friends.
I got in so many mixed. Yeah, Matt LeBlanc, Matthew Broderick.
I could see Matthew
I
Broderick.
could see
Yeah,
that.
someone said Matthew Broderick, and then one person said Colin Farrell, which I don't know necessarily.
Saturday Night Live guy.
No, Colin Farrell. That's Colin
he?
Quinn. You're thinking of.
Oh, Colin Quinn.
Colin, which I don't know.
Oh, I'm not
see
taking
Colin Farrell.
I'm taking
Farrell's
Colin
that
Quinn
Irish-
and Will Ferrell.
Colin Farrell's that Irish guy that was in like the Daredevil movie. He played Bullseye.
Okay.
A few other things, but yeah. Someone even said Robert Downey Jr., but that's going a little bit far, I think, on that one.
I don't know. We just strap on an Iron Man outfit and we'll see.
Yeah, right.
You know? As far as Pat, who has the most amazing eyebrows? Who could pull off Pat?
You guys have a strong eyebrow game. You're not coming in weak with that weak eyebrow action.
Jason Alexander.
I could see Jason Alexander. I could. What's his name?
Maybe a young and handsome Dan Aykroyd. Maybe.
You have a Dan Aykroyd vibe for sure.
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd could have played you for sure. And funny, too. Viciously funny. Pat's got that sneaky funny. Comes in over the top, like with a wry, funny one. Who else? Let me think this through a little bit. I feel like...
Well, chime in on our socials, people.
Oh, yeah. Hey,
You know?
you've gotten to know us a little bit. Who could be...
There's pictures of us on there, and tell us which celebrity you think we most look like. And I was chatting with my family. Okay, who's going to play my daughter Sky in the movie? And like, find the kid with the biggest, curliest hair in the world, and they've got the gig.
Her hair is so curly.
Her hair is amazing.
And your hair's straight, and so is Kenzie's.
Kenzie's
so
hair
I
is
don't
straight
know.
too. My hair has a little curl to it if
Little
it's
wave.
long, if it's wet, but not like this. Her hair is like, God, it's like just a mane of beautiful curls. And I always joke, I'm proud of the book. It was a long process to get it written and everything. But the second thing I'm proud about is the photo on the cover, because I did her hair that day.
Yes,
I washed it, conditioned it, we air dried it. It was a whole thing, and it's a picture of her literally reaching up to touch the sky, which is appropriate because in the Sky Diaries book, sunsets, shooting stars, the sky itself, there's a lot of undertones that are relevant to the sky. And on the front cover, she's touching the sky, and she's actually named after sunsets and shooting stars. SKY. That's why we named her Sky.
Nice.
But it's kind of it's a long story. It's a saga. I mean, it spans multiple lifetimes. It includes events that I've experienced since I was a child. It includes how I stumbled into my line of work as a psychic medium, which was ultimately a near-death experience that happened to me in the fall of 2006. All the synchronicities, all the miracles involving the death of my grandma and what an impact she had on me throughout my life. Initially fostering my interest in things such as monsters, myths, and mysteries. And the story maps out all the amazing, beautiful miracles that I received from my grandma to know that she was still around me in spirit. And ultimately, once I was establishing myself as a psychic medium, I had an appointment one day with a client named Kenzie. And in her appointment, she's asking me about her future, and I'm predicting things like I always do. And she asked me about children, and I remember telling her, it was a feeling came over me of deja vu. It was almost a feeling unlike, like I was remembering something but wasn't really sure what I was remembering. And I told Kenzie, I said, someday you are going to have a very special daughter. She's going to be an old soul. She'll be highly empathetic. She'll be great with animals. She'll be there's something unique about this kid. As I'm describing this child, there was a glass candle holder on the shelf on my wall that literally exploded into 1,000 pieces due to whatever temperature change or whatever, but the candle exploded. At the time we kind of chalked it up to, wow, that was strange. But in hindsight, we wonder if it was our guardian angels and loved ones in heaven trying to tell us, pay attention to the significance of this conversation about your daughter.
Yeah.
Well, the ironic part about being a psychic medium is I can't always predict my own future. So little did I know at the time that Kenzie and I would fall in love, get married, and have this child together. And as we did, again, just the synchronicities just started to pile up. First of all, discovering that Kenzie and I had shared a past lifetime together as Native Americans on the Midwestern plains in the 1800s. But on top of that, we came across actual, tangible, physical evidence that our guardian angels, Henry and Sarah, were actually Kenzie's great-great-great-great-grandparents.
Oh, wow.
And we actually found documentation in an old shoebox in Kenzie's closet that verifies that we actually were best friends with our guardian angels in that past lifetime.
That's crazy.
And as the story progresses, it really culminates with when Sky was just shy of 3 years old, which is significant. I'll tell you why in a minute. But when she was just shy of 3 years old, she started to say things that left us with our jaws hanging open in disbelief. Turns out she was having memories of who she used to be in her former lifetime. Of course, at 3 years old, Sky didn't have a reference point for anything. She's just saying things. She's pointing to objects, around in our surroundings, and she has memories of where those objects came from. And ultimately, we were able to piece together that she was somebody very influential from our past, and was the last puzzle piece in the paranormal jigsaw puzzle. And just that aha moment was one of the most shocking moments of my entire life, and that's kind of how the book culminates. But I'll put it this way: I'm a mildly creative person. I like to do artsy things and creative activities. This true story of the Sky Diaries, it is so weird and so fantastical. I could not have made this up. And I feel like, that you might find a fiction story out there that's more insane than this, but in my opinion, as far as true stories go, you might not find one that's as jaw-dropping as this one. It has everything you could be looking for as a paranormal fan. There's ghosts, there's angels, there's synchronicity galore, there's miracles, there's past life memories. It's a pretty heartwarming love story, honestly. And as the back cover of the book describes, it's about how from one lifetime to the next, a family's love never ends. It merely changes forms from one life to the next.
Yeah.
So, again, if this sounds like something that would get you through that post-holiday lull, you can order your paperback copy of the Sky Diaries on Amazon. And a little fun fact, I don't know if a lot of our listeners have been to my events or not, but anyone who purchases a copy of my book will be able to attend a free gallery reading. And those are the events where I connect with deceased loved ones and relay messages to the audience. And I'm actually doing 2 of those for people who buy my book. One will be on Zoom for people nationwide. So if you're in California, Texas, or Florida, or wherever, and you buy my book, we'll give you a Zoom link so you can attend that event digitally. And I'm also doing one in-person live event on January 28th, I believe it is. So anyone who buys a book can attend that event live on January 28th. And anyone who buys 2 books it will additionally be entered into a contest for a small group session. So this is rounding up 5 or 6 of your closest family and friends and sitting down with me and having essentially the same experience, to hear from your deceased loved ones, to get a psychic reading, a 2-hour experience, very private, very intimate. So,
if you buy 10 books, the paranormal dads will take you out for dinner.
That's right. You can buy 10 books. Yeah, we'll get your name tattooed. Eddie will get your name tattooed on his muscly arm.
I will.
Yeah. So anyway, shameless plug, but no. I hope it's well received. I think it's going to be a story that speaks to people on so many personal levels. And you talk about vulnerable. There are so many very private, very personal, intimate details of my life that people have never, ever heard before. And I've been in the public spotlight for many years now, and I keep telling people, you think you've heard parts of the story, you haven't heard the whole story, and the Sky Diaries is the whole story.
Wow.
And not only are you writing, like when you're doing a biography or autobiography, you kind of, there's a where Andy started, how he grew up, where he ended up. But you're dealing with multiple lifetimes as well, so
yeah.
that adds to the layers of the story.
Yeah, it is, and it's. I have 3 published books already, but this is the first one of its kind because most of my other books, they're more informational. They're more
kind of topical.
Topical. Each chapter is like a standalone chapter about ghosts, angels, things like that. But this is actually one continuous story. It kind of floats into a past life, comes back to the present. Again, a lot of synchronicities click. A lot of people, the proofreaders who have read it for me, said that they couldn't put it down, and in fact, one of them read it through all 380 pages in one sitting.
Oh wow!
So I hope it's a page turner. And so again, January 11th is the day to get that book. If you get it in whatever version, if you get paperback or ebook or both, be sure to email my office proof of your purchase, because that's what's going to qualify you for the free, for all the bonuses
Gallery,
I just mentioned.
All the bonuses. Also, the grammar is going to be impeccable because Andy is really well spoken. So
I know some words and stuff. No, that's what the proofreaders are for, Eddie. Because
Exactly.
when you write a book, you know what it's supposed to say. So when my eyes read all my typos, I just skip over them.
Yeah.
I missed all thousands of typos that were in there. So hopefully they caught them all.
Oh, sure. You know.
Yeah.
Can you please change "I ain't got nothing" to?
All right.
Man, well done. The notion of the following of the thread of your past lives and figuring out the significance of those things is, fascinating.
Yeah. So again, January 11th is the date to buy the Sky Diaries book. That'll be on Amazon. In the show notes, we'll post a link to my email, because when you buy the book on January 11th, email my office proof of your purchase. We'll tell you how to attend one of the free events and help spread the word. I know it's after Christmas that's coming out, but I figured it would give people something to read, something to inspire you and get you through all the dark, boring winter months of January and February into springtime. So
some of those
get you a fresh outlook for the new year, right?
there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Some of those Christmas presents that come like right after Christmas are kind of fun too.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I got you this book. I'm gonna get you this book. Here's a little screenshot, and wait 2 weeks and I'll buy you a book.
There you go.
It's exciting.
Well, thanks for letting me plug that a little bit, guys. Thanks to all you listeners for tolerating a little bit of advertising there, but we've been waiting on this one because it's
super fun,
near and dear to my heart.
Congratulations!
So, well, that's what we're all doing. I mean, it comes into it's all part of what we're doing here.
We've been hearing about this book for
like
you said,
it's been a clip,
a little bit, yeah. So it's exciting that it's all kind of coming to a head here.
Yeah. So it's kind of a case we were talking about Sky before she was born. In fact, we had friends and family members that were dreaming about Sky before Kenzie was even pregnant with her. So it's all part of the, fate and destiny component of the story. But gosh, from weird creatures to great movies to upcoming books, I think we covered just about everything. What's the name of that cryptid again?
Oh, jeez. I don't even have it in front of me.
The Snaggle-floofers.
Snoofer, floofer, fluffer.
Yeah, Sniggle Pops.
Here's a fun thing. We should have a contest. If you can come up with the funniest name of a made-up cryptid, send it in to us. Maybe we should run a little competition. I tell you what, anybody who can come up with the funniest one, we're going to pick a winner, and we're going to send them a little prize.
Little Paranormal Dad's prize.
And Snuffleupagus is taken.
You
That's
can't do that.
Can't use that one.
Big Bird's imaginary friend. Don't do that. But yeah, the weirdest, funniest, and we get to vote.
Yeah, we get to vote.
And we'll read it out on the next time we do a podcast.
Yep.
Do a recording.
So put on your creative paranormal podcast hat and tell us. And I have to say, Eddie, the whole time we've been recording here, during the serious things we've been talking about, I'm looking at you and I'm trying not to laugh because you have this elf hat on.
Yeah.
And we're talking about past lives, and I'm like, this dude was a garden gnome in a past lifetime.
I have no regrets. I have garden gnome energy all day long. I'll keep your garden safe and bring magic to it. Magic.
Well, as always, stick through the final song if you want to hear a couple bloopers and outtakes from earlier in this episode. Thanks to people at freesound.org for giving us some sound bites and music. And, yeah, hit us up on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can even email us at paranormaldads@gmail.com.
Yep.
And he's got it all. It's all right there. He
Got
laid
it
it all out.
Do it, man. We're done.
So you get me talking about
We
past
just
lives
say-
and I get all hyper.
Woo! We just say goodbye and thank you for listening.
Talk to you next time.
Thanks, everybody. What do you you doing over there?
Doing my tarot cards.
Oh, is that what it is?
I'm doing tarot cards as you guys are doing.
I see Eddie messing with his phone.
I'm doing my digital tarot cards. Ooh, girl, hooded man, and ecstasy. Ooh, I'm gonna do ecstasy.
Things getting hot and steamy. Glow stick steamy. Okay,
Steamy.
I got this.
I like Bigfoot butts, and I cannot lie. Andy, sweet as candy, you've got those paranormal eyes. Andy, as fine as brandy, I like to eat apple pies. But that's a lie, because I don't care for apple pie. You've heard of carb loading. I want to bring out a new phrase called carb bloating. Like where I just ate like a loaf of bread. Just stood there, just like, I
gotta pay.
Gotta poo.
I drank me about 15 Diet Cokes.
I drank about 15.
I gotta pee.